prove raptors can follow orders.
You never thought how many millions a trained predator might be worth?
They're gonna sell them.
Not blue. They need it for something else.
What is that thing?
Hola, comrades! Today's topic of interest, the summer blockbuster season, which, let's admit it, has been lackluster. It hasn't been a great year for film in general. Sure, there was the lightning bolt that was Black Panther, but other than that, it's been mostly bland. Not bad, just bland. This is far from the worst year in film history, it's just been rather uneventful. And the summer blockbuster season has epitomized this. Avengers 3 made an absurd amount of money, but it did not make a profound cultural impact in the way that Black Panther did. Compared to that film, Avengers 3 was almost an afterthought. Oh, people were excited about it, sure enough, but it was the kind of excitement you get when you're riding a roller coaster. You anticipate the trip, then you strap yourself in, and when you're done, you walk out and say that it was fun. If you liked it enough, you go again. But unless the experience was unspeakably horrible, you're unlikely to dwell on it. And Avengers 3 was actually a high point of the summer blockbuster season. At least that film had enough bombast and grandiosity to justify its existence. Meanwhile, a slew of mediocre franchise films have flooded the market, and the general public either mildly accepted these films or gave a strong rebuke to them. Black Panther succeeded for many reasons. It's a damn good film that satiated tragically underserved black audiences. It is one of the most thoughtfully constructed villains of all time with Eric Killmonger. It's an intelligent Afro-futurist masterpiece that engages with real issues of the legacy of slavery in the African diaspora, but it's also a film that was unapologetically big and unapologetically new. It was an event film through and through. But we had no other films like it, or films that were even that ambitious. Sure, both the sixth film in the Mission Impossible franchise and the cleverly tender Ant-Man and the Wasp did well, but neither captured that cultural zeitgeist. If you stretch the definition of a summer blockbuster, you could include Incredibles 2 on that list, but while it made an incredible amount of money, it's basically another Finding Dory. Good, but not as interesting or original as the first. Hollywood has always wanted to capitalize on what is already popular. That's nothing new, but the franchise boom has grown to such an extent that the industry seems to be swallowing its tail. The supposed summer blockbusters have, to some extent, fizzled out. Jurassic World 2 made far less money than the first entry in the series. Check out these numbers. Jurassic World 1 made an astounding $296 million in America in week 1. Jurassic World made in that same time frame $205 million. Not paltry change to be sure, but a noticeable come down. That's 30%, which, if you're dealing in sums of money this large, is a big deal. And upon release, 2 fell faster than 1 at the box office, causing that discrepancy to grow over the weeks. The reason for this is painfully obvious. Jurassic World 1 had a great concept. It asked, what if the park from the original films was actually open? This was featured in the marketing, and rightfully so. 2, however, revealed that the franchise continued to exist solely because the corporate overlords needed their pockets lined. That even vaguely popular art functions as an inherently commercial venture does not supremely bother me, but when it gets to the point when commercial success is very clearly the main attraction, and the art is merely secondary, I start to feel insulted. And then there was Solo. Whether intentionally or not, this film functioned as a retreat from the bold positions taken by not only The Last Jedi, but all the last 3 Disney Star Wars films. As those positions incurred the wrath of internet fanboys, one would think that a film that backtracked on them would find a market. Instead, Solo became a commercial disaster. Releasing it 6 months after The Last Jedi was not the best idea, nor was banking almost entirely on nostalgia. The Force Awakens made $247 million opening weekend, in line to a domestic cume of over $900 million. The Last Jedi made $220 million opening weekend. Even fellow spin-off Rogue One made $150 million opening weekend. Solo, however, $84 million, and it dropped fast. With a budget of over $300 million, this is the first Star Wars film in history to lose money. Critical reception was far from rapturous, with even the positive reviews proclaiming it to be a fun but forgettable blockbuster that only retreaded old ground. And that's not what the masses wanted either. The prequels, if nothing else, were at least new stories, but Solo was nothing but a bland origin story. This wasn't even a dark and gritty retelling. At least with that, there's some justification for telling stories that people already know. But here, there was nothing to make it stand out, and without critical buzz, it was soon forgotten. And I do have to say, there is something hilarious about the fact that this, the ostensibly most safe, least bold, and most commercial Star Wars film ever, was a truly miraculous flop. Then of course, there are films like Deadpool 2, which, while not a flop or a disappointment, failed to either live up to the commercial heights of the first film or make the same cultural impact. So the summer blockbuster, while not quite dead, is in significant decline. However, before we go further, we should talk about what exactly a summer blockbuster is. This shouldn't be too hard, correct? The term hasn't been ingrained into our culture by men like Spielberg and Lucas and Bobby Zemeckis. It's a flashy, big-budget, special effects-heavy, 4-quadrant tentpole that people flock to in the summer. When it's too hot to go outside, but everyone wants to do something and the kids are out of school. These are films that have become synonymous with modern Hollywood, like E.T., Jurassic Park, Jaws, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Back to the Future, the original Star Wars trilogy, and so on. These are films that have become cultural touchstones. Even those who haven't seen them know many of the plot points, but if you admit that you haven't seen any of these films, you're marked as something of a cultural outcast, as though you are a Puritan pilgrim in the 1700s who admitted that you only rarely read the Bible. When these films were released, they were like bolts of lightning. They were colorful, exciting, and huge. They energized people. There had been nothing like them before. It's hard to comprehend that because they eventually became such fixtures of American culture. But there was a time when the image of Hollywood was much less franchise tentpoles and much more actor-driven vehicles. Think less Indiana Jones and more The Maltese Falcon. After the auteurist, director-driven system that had dominated since the post-war era crumbled under its own weight, the door was open for the rise of the blockbuster. There had been big films before, of course. What made the blockbuster different was not exactly how much money the films made, but rather the expectations surrounding them. Their appeal was so wide, and the content was so exciting yet inoffensive that they were expected to be big. The studio banked on them, and to hit that 4-quadrant audience, these films were released in the summer. But look at how that has changed recently. First, let's define summer. Scientifically speaking, summer is between the middle of June and the late middle of September. However, culturally, summer is late May to early September. In America, where I'm from, that's the interval between Memorial Day and Labor Day. Using that definition, the last film to be released in summer that topped the year-end box office list in America was Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2, released all the way back in July of 2011. Even if you stretch the definition of summer to include all of May, which you shouldn't, then the last summer film to top that list was The Avengers in 2012. The top grossing film for the 5 years after this was released in either November or December, and the top grossing American film of 2018, Black Panther, was released in February. Batman vs. Superman, as wretched a film as it was, had one of the largest opening weekends in history despite being released in March. Even Avengers 3 was released in April. I counted it as a summer movie earlier in the video, but perhaps I should not have. Summer movie season has become such a nebulous term that one has to wonder whether it even exists as a conceivable entity anymore. If summer movie season can start in April, a month when I had a snow day, then what does it even mean? So the summer blockbuster has been slain on two fronts. In spirit, it has been killed by the cycle of repetition robbing big films of any sense of wonder or originality, while in form, it has been killed by the growing realization made by the studios that because of the centripetal pull of this cycle of repetition, they can release films at any time of year and still have those films rake in no less than they would have if they were released in the popular summer slot. With studios depending more on tentpoles than ever before, the concept of most big films being released in the summer has become quaint. Facing intense summertime competition and the decreased importance of season, more studios are releasing hit films outside of conventional dates. Though the summer season has been particularly barren this year, it is not an isolated event, but rather the result of two processes: endless recycling and de-agglomeration, based on the assured audience guaranteed by that recycling, and these two processes are unlikely to stop. The summer blockbuster season is quickly becoming the relic of a bygone era.
Jurassic World, The Island. You're all right. Easy, girl. All of that is in the past.
I don't know if the utter domination of franchise blockbusters has made the movie landscape worse necessarily, but it has made that landscape more predictable. Jurassic World 2 has no surprises waiting for you. Neither does Solo. Even the good films released this summer, like Ant-Man and the Wasp and Mission Impossible 6, are tonally what to expect if you're familiar with the films that came before them. I want to broaden my horizons when I watch film. I want a new experience. It doesn't necessarily have to be smart or funny or poignant or challenging. It just needs to be new. It just needs to be somewhat interesting. It needs to be at least superficially exciting rather than shambling zombie-like across the screen. That's not too much to ask. There's nothing inherently wrong with franchise filmmaking, but every entry in a franchise should push that franchise forward. I adore franchises that are willing to evolve and challenge their characters and their audience, rather than serving the same schlock in every entry. But most franchises don't do this. They're anodyne. I wouldn't say they're bad, but they don't justify their existence. So if you liked what you saw today, consider donating to my Patreon so I can produce even more scorching content. Also, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all that summary stuff. Adios, comrades!